every year this is like May. I look forward to it. People do for graduations and weddings and all that stuff, but I so look forward to AccessU, to all the wonderful people who come here to learn and to teach and to share with each other, to foster this community of learning and dedication to equal access to technology for everyone. And I think people are really finally getting the idea about putting people first when it comes to thinking about accessibility. The next generation of a lot of things people are thinking about now, and so we decided we'd kick off our panel today, our conference today, with a panel about eldering in the accessibility community. Yesterday, people were saying, I'm glad you're considering aging, but that's not quite what we're doing, and Wendy will tell us more about our intention here in a few minutes when we all get together. Okay, well with that, I think we will start talking about eldering in the accessibility community, honoring wisdom, embracing change. It's going to be led by Wendy Chisholm. Lainey Feingold is joining the conversation, and they asked me to talk to them too, so I'm going to do it. Thank you very much.
All right. Good morning. How many other people are here from the West Coast? Yeah, nice and early, huh? All right. Well, I'm honored to be here this morning. A few months ago, started talking to these ladies about eldering. They had this awesome idea and invited me to join, so thank you. To kick it off, let's just really quickly introduce ourselves. So just name, title, and organization. So I'm Wendy Chisholm. I'm an accessibility strategist at Microsoft. All right, that's all I'm going to say for now, because we're going to get a bit more into our histories in a moment.
I'm Lainey Feingold. I'm a disability rights lawyer from Berkeley, California, and an author.
I'm Sharron. I'm the executive director of Knowbility.
All right, so what we're going to do this morning is we're going to kind of introduce the topic, spend some time talking about it, and laying the foundation for a discussion that we really want to invite all of you to participate in. So we'll probably talk about 20 minutes. We need to end at 8:45, right?
No, the classes start at 9:15.
Oh.
So we can go until 9 o'clock. The conversation can go until 9 o'clock.
All right, people, get ready to dig in.
Yeah.
Here we go. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is kind of set the stage for what we mean by eldering. As Sharron alluded to, we're not quite talking about aging, we're talking about eldering. So Lainey, can you kind of walk us through what you're thinking about with eldering?
Yeah, first of all, thanks you all for coming early in the morning. We appreciate that. And like Wendy said, we really want it to be a discussion. These are things that we've been thinking about and talking about. So if you have said to yourself, eldering, like what is that? You are not alone, because when I type eldering into Apple Mail, it tries to switch it to endearing, which is okay, I'll take that. When I type it into Word, it gives me two choices. Let's see, I think I wrote them. Yeah, when I type it into Word, it gives me enduring. So I thought I could work with that. I mean, there's two definitions of enduring. One is like, oh my God, I endured that miserable lecture and I couldn't bear it. Not that one. But there's enduring about longevity and perseverance in being in something for a long time. So when we're talking about eldering in the accessibility community, what we're talking about is people who have been in it for a while, not just about age. So usually I never talk with notes, but there were so many ideas you just want to kind of sprinkle out there to get your creative juices flowing, because we want this to be a conversation. So some of the things that we're thinking about when we talk about eldering is because of the longevity, because of being in the accessibility community for a long time, not a magic number, not a magic age, but a while, there's knowledge, there's perspective, there's experience, and there's community history. A really key part of this is community. But just because you've been in something for a long time doesn't make you an elder. So a couple of the other things I want to just sprinkle out there, see what lands these may resonate with you, they may not, you may have other ideas. Credibility, wisdom, discernment, authenticity, connectedness, good sense, that's good. Reasonable, someone people look to for answers. And also the flip side, someone who knows when to step aside, someone who's adaptive, someone who appreciates people who are new and not elders yet, people who understand how to listen and how important listening is, and someone who knows how to embrace change. So a few other parts of the definition that we've been thinking about just to throw out. First of all, we're using eldering. It's a verb. Eldering is a verb. Because we're not just talking about people who have the experience, we're talking about people who are still doing. Eldering, still doing things with intentionality, with awareness. What is our role, having been in the space? Like myself, I started in accessibility in 1995. Another aspect, eldering needs community. You're a community elder. This is a word that we didn't just make up. This is a word from long native traditions, spiritual traditions. We have a community in accessibility, which we are honored to be a part of. And people like Sharron bringing us together at AccessU helps create that community. So when you talk about eldering, the community is an aspect of that. It's not about a magic age, I already said that. A few other things. We want to recognize in this conversation, we're talking about eldering, but it also, inherent in that is that people come into the community at all different times and all different stages. And like Sharron said to me when I showed her these notes originally, well, beginner's mind, for those of you, so many of you said you were here for the first time, so many of you may be new to accessibility, that mind helps elders keep being a verb. So that's another thing. What do elders need from this community? What do we need as we transition into different phases of our career or out of our careers? And what can we do as elders to help amplify the wise voices of everyone in the community who aren't elders yet? So you could say, how can elders help find their own, how can elders help all of you, all of us find our own interior elder voice? So those are just some of the ideas. Consider them sprinkled, and Sharron and Wendy chime in on the basics.
Well, I really want to reiterate the idea that beginner's mind is so important, because when I was thrilled to see that so many people were here for the first time, because I think that infuses our practice with fresh thinking and fresh perspective. And I think one of the jobs of eldering or elders is to facilitate that, to encourage that, to make people feel welcome to come in, instead of, the closed kind of communities that you sometimes find where there's an elite, or we want to really be sure that we avoid that, and that we hear very strongly from the voices of the people who are most affected by the work we do, that nothing about us without us, that people with disabilities are consciously and very proactively included in the voices, and actually are. Many of, at least in my experience, my own learning, those were my elders, so.
Absolutely. So so I'm here for the first time also, but I'm not new to accessibility. So I want to get a better sense of that. So how many people are new to accessibility? So this is your first accessibility event. Awesome, well, welcome. And I think you're bringing the beginner's mind, which is exactly what we're talking about. And I think one of the pieces I really have enjoyed talking with Lainey and Sharron about the beginner's mind and that need to adapt and to change is that by getting new people in and understanding how the world is changing, those perspectives are really important. And talking about perspectives and lineage and how all of us were beginners at some point, I think you had something to tell us about this tree.
This tree, this cardboard tree on the wall here came directly from these conversations, because at one point Wendy was talking about how just in thinking about this and thinking about our own time as beginners, who were our elders and how we have these lineages. And Wendy talked about her lineage, I talked about mine. Of course, it's John Slatin. We named this conference for him. He was my colleague, and along with John Slatin, there was Jim Thatcher from IBM, and Jim Allen from the Texas School for the Blind. And from that lineage, we started just talking about where we kind of got formed and our ideas shaped. And Wendy had a different path, Lainey, of course, had a different path, and so we thought, wouldn't it be interesting to ask all of us, over the next 2 days, we're going to move the little tree down there to the trustee hall, and we have some leaves and branches here that we're going to add in. And I started, that you're going to add in, and I started at the bottom with the roots. I have a big branch called, or a big root called civil rights, because I think that's where it starts. I've got the ADA as one of the subroots. The UN Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities is one of the smaller roots. And so think about those roots. Where did these ideas even come from? Maybe the W3C might be one of the roots, or the technology roots. And then we'll build some branches, and we'll have people like Jim Thatcher maybe, or different schools that people went to, and then hopefully we'll end up with a leaf with your name on it, and we'll see, what roots and branches brought you here and brought you into the community. These are sticky, so you peel off the, right in a permanent marker. We're going to have them around, and you can start right now, anybody who wants to, before you leave the room. But we're going to move it over there, and so I think we'll have this interactive map by the end of the conference about who we are and how we all fit together and where we came from.
Yeah, so talking about that, where did you two come from? Because I know both of you are pretty significant branches on this tree over here, for roots, however you're looking at it.
I'm not under the ground yet.
Oh, yeah.
I have been so really just honored and amazed that I ended up in the accessibility community. And I consider my lineage. I started working on talking ATMs in 1995 when blind people came to me as a lawyer and said, can't use a single ATM in the United States because none were accessible. And towards the end of that endeavor, I tell these stories in my book, we did great with the ATMs because we didn't do a lawsuit. We created collaboration with the banks and everything was great. We're getting some of the first talking ATMs in the United States. And again, like Sharron said, everything is led by disabled people in this field and this work that we do. Some of the blind clients came to us and said, okay, great job in the ATMs, but there's this thing called online banking. And if you don't make that accessible too, we're gonna be locked out. And so, like, whoa, there was something I never heard of. It was like 1998. And Greg Vanderheiden had been helping us with the ATMs. And I said, Greg, can you help us with the web? Well, Greg is one of my roots. He's above the ground too, but you know what we mean by roots. You know what we mean.
Substantial branch.
Yeah, period branch. And Greg was, Greg, you can look him up and find out all the great things, and it was like, he taught me so much, but he was so busy. And I said, Greg, I need someone to help me with the web. And Greg said, I know the perfect person. And lucky us, that perfect person is in the room right now, who is Sean Henry. Sean. Was at W3C at the time, and she became the very first consultant in a structured negotiation about web accessibility when Bank of America became the very first company in the US to commit to its blind consumers on this. So it just grew for me, knowing Sean and learning so much from Sean and also from Judy Brewer and then Sharron, Wendy. I mean, I'm always turning to Jared Smith, his amazing website at webaid.org with so many resources. So, where's Jared?
It's right there.
Jared is an example. Jared is an example, like Wendy, that eldering is not about age. It's about experience in the community and how fast you get it and how you use it. So, that's all. So yeah, that's
1995, magic number.
Yeah.
How about you, Sharron? Where's your branch?
Oh, well, I was get away from technology most of my life. I had an associate's degree in computer science and worked in it for a little while and thought, oh my God, this is so boring. And so I ended up being a caterer or something else. But everywhere I went, I noticed that I came back to do, I computerized the inventory, or so I was always using the technology. And I was working for Easter Seals as a program development officer, trying to increase employment for people with disabilities. And I mean, that was mid-90s, and our city was being remade by technology. I mean, Austin was transformed. Not always, people don't necessarily think it was completely for the better, but from my point of view, man, technology, employment for people with disabilities, wow, what an opportunity. And we kept hitting these walls. We kept hitting these walls of access. That, well, you can't use the tools. Yeah, it would be great if you're blind, not to have to drive to work from home, to have the technology, and we kept hitting these walls. So I started talking to other people in the community, people at Austin Freenet and some of the people who were addressing digital divide issues about, what about people with disabilities? And they were like, well, we're worried about poor people and minorities, and yeah, people with disabilities, but it wasn't really a focus for them. So then I started talking to entrepreneurs. Like, hey, you guys, you're making all this technology. Why aren't you thinking about people with disabilities? They were like, oh, well, we got this other stuff to do first. So one of these entrepreneurs said to me, look, Sharron, if you want the tech community to pay attention, you've got to do something competitive. So I thought, how about an accessible design contest? And that's how the Accessibility Internet Rally got started. And of course, at that time, it was like, okay, so I need somebody who knows this really well. And there was a place at UT called the Institute for Technology and Learning that was led by a man who was a PhD professor in English, but he understood the power of the technology. His name's John Slatin. And he was already, he'd integrated the thinking about accessibility into his curriculum. He was just the strongest advocate. And so when I brought John into the advisory board for the Accessibility Internet Rally, things really took off because he helped us, develop the judging criteria. And of course, after that, after the Accessibility Internet Rally started, we got a new CEO at Easter Seals. She didn't want to continue a contest. She said, we're not a technology company, we're a rehabilitation company, we can't do this. And we'd already had one of those contests, and everybody was pretty jazzed by it. It was really, really fun. And so they said, well, this is startup country, Sharron. Austin, everybody's starting stuff up. Start your own nonprofit. And so that's what we did, and Knowbility's been around ever since. And of course, like Lainey said, once you start meeting these people who, like John introduced me to Sean, and to the W3C, and to Greg, and to the people who were practicing. The community was smaller then, but it was still pretty widespread, global, and you start meeting other people with those interests, and you do form this global community that it's great to be part of.
I forgot someone in my branch, because I was thinking the very beginning, but like Sharron just said, the more you think of it as a community and immerse yourself, I like to say accessibility is not a job. To lawyers, I say accessibility isn't a practice area, it's a community. And so in 2008, which was almost 10 years after I first started, I heard about this guy, Jim Thatcher, who was the expert in the first lawsuit against Target stores, and he was coming to Berkeley, and I just sent him a note, like, we should know each other, and we had dinner. Oh my God, and then Jim became just really such a hero and a help to me in a million different ways. So.
And I think so community keeps coming up, and I think that's one of the things that I think we want to kind of establish with this conversation as well, is that y'all are here, but now you're part of this community. And I know the community for me has played a significant role, not only in my professional life, but my personal life. I think part of the reason I'm here is that in January, I was feeling really lonely, and I reached out to Sharron, and she's like, hey, I've got this opportunity for you. And here I am, in front of all your smiling, beautiful faces. So the community aspect is very important for us, and I think it's been interesting so I come from Microsoft, and I haven't always been there. I started out in academia with Greg Vanderheiden and the W3C, and the first part of my career was all very much in academia and consulting, and it was a really hard switch for me to then go to the corporation, because it was all about the bottom line. And my whole career up until that point was just, let's make the world better. And now it's like, wait, and we have to make money. So Larry Goldberg, who's another person that's been great, he told me about the idea of selling the popcorn. And what he said was, in order to get captioning in every single theater in the United States, they had to figure out how to sell the popcorn. And what he said was, by getting captioning there, they'd get more people in the theaters and they'd make more money by selling more popcorn. So that's kind of one of the main things I think is great about the community, is all the different perspectives that we bring, not only with the beginner's mind. And I think part of the idea for the panel is, as some of us who've been here, all of us collectively, I think we've got over 80 years of experience in accessibility on the stage right now. Because 1995 is kind of the magic number for me too. That's when I started at the University of Wisconsin-Madison with Greg. I got my master's there working for him, and then, started right off then working on what was to become. Well, so I used to play with the screen reader and a web browser with my friend Neil, who was blind, making those pages accessible, and we started writing them down, and that kind of became the basis of Look I Want. So then that's what I've been doing ever since. So. Community though, I think let's dig into that a bit, because I think it's how do we start bringing folks into the conversation. How has community, other than just the leaders and these kind of larger branches, how does the community influence the work that you do? Because both of you are really incredible, I think, at bringing together people who are new to accessibility and bringing them into the community. So Lainey, in your work in structured negotiation, you really do a great job of bringing companies to a table as partners, which I think is incredible. And I think that's one thing that's really unique to this community, and that I've heard as I've brought more and more of my Microsoft cohorts to like CSUN. They're like, this is unlike any conference I've ever been to before. Everybody's really nice. There's no competition here. Like, I'm talking to Google and Facebook. What? It's a very unusual thing, but I think it's a really important part of accessibility, is that you have to make these connections to make things accessible. And also you, Sharron, with AIR, like the way that you bring together the people who need to learn about accessibility and make it exciting. You both find ways to motivate people, and you kind of do this kung fu to bridge people and bring them in. So maybe talk a bit about that. The flexibility and adaptability.
The AIR competition, it really was, where Jim Thatcher was there testifying for targeting lawsuits and that. And my thinking about, from what I knew of technologists, is the way you really hook them in is not to make this an obligatory, regulatory, maybe they'll go through the motions, but their heart won't be in it. Mm-hmm. And the way AIR, the Accessibility Internet Rally, works is that you challenge their creativity. You say, what kind of a cool website can you make and make it accessible? You turn it into a design challenge, and then it becomes a really creative endeavor. Accessibility becomes exciting and engaging and something that you really want to do, because, James Craig, who's now, I don't know, he's somewhere in the hierarchy of the tech folks in the accessibility department at Apple. And he started at an AIR competition just because he wanted to do some volunteering. He didn't really know that much about accessibility, but once he grokked that, oh my gosh, this is what we're trying to do. This is the coolest design challenge ever. And he never, we've got people who come through AIR who ended up at Google, Microsoft, Apple, all over, and all kinds of little, I went to some tech conference, and it was a school K-12 technology conference. A guy who's, now dealing with these OCR, he said, I went back to my AIR experience and I learned so much. So I think that challenge of creativity is much stronger than although the legal, not to say, I know, here we are,
This is the challenge of my life. And a friend of mine, Brian East, where's Brian? I invited him to come this morning. He's an amazing, those of you in Austin, you're blessed with one of the best disability rights lawyers in the entire country right here in Austin, and very humble Brian East. And this is the problem with the law. This is really my challenge, talk about challenge, because the law is considered a hammer. Jared did a session at CSUN, when was that? Maybe like 7 years ago, which really was one of the impetuses of trying to like write this book and get the word out about how collaboration can lead to accessibility. They did a session on does the law have to be a hammer? And especially now, I mean, those of you, many of you are probably here because the legal space has changed and there's a lot of people who are now seeing it as a practice area, not as an area of creativity. And that has been my challenge with accessibility because the law is important. Like Sharron said, one of the deep roots is civil rights. And civil rights means individual people with disabilities have a right to information and technology. That is why we are all doing this work, and we need different legal strategies to make that civil rights a reality, but it would be better if we didn't. If people could just take know that it's a civil right and then focus on the creativity and the expansion. I'm always saying, law is a thing that looks at risk and it's small, and lawyers in general, when I speak to, I'm so lucky I have an accessibility community, because to be honest with you, when you talk in the legal space, it's a completely different thing. And I think one of our challenges as a community, especially now when things are changing, is to hold on to the core inclusion and creativity without just keeping it in the law office, because that's going to wreck us. As a lawyer, I can say that is going to wreck us. If this issue that has built this incredible community and this tree turns into something people just do because it's a legal requirement. Yes, the legal requirements are important, and I believe in lawsuits. I believe more in structured negotiation, but I believe in lawsuits. But it can't be the driver.
And that's like the standards too, like the guidelines and the standards. You have them, you have that structure, you have something to measure against, but you can't use that as the end of the story, because without that understanding of the evolving technology, the creativity of the technology, the user needs, and new and exciting ways to meet the user needs while you're doing inclusive design. That's where it's so funny where people say, well, I'm at 508, I checked all the check boxes, but it's still a miserable user experience. Where I think eldering in that case is very helpful.
Mm-hmm. I didn't mean to get off on the problem with the law, but back to Wendy's question about community and bringing people together, because I do think that is one of the roles of eldering, and one of the advantages of enduring and longevity is that we all know a lot of people, if we've been in it a long time. And for me, the entire reason that I'm sitting on the stage is because blind people have trusted me over many years, 23 years now, with trying to use the law to get the accessibility they need to do their banking and their healthcare and their jobs and everything. So for me, part of eldering is making sure that the people, blind people in specific, for me, get more of a voice, and that their voice is seen. Like, people think, oh, you did a structured negotiation with Humana or Bank of America, renaming the companies, but I'm not, I said Bank of America, I didn't say Roger Peterson and Kathy Martinez and Jerry Coons and all these elders in the blind community, which, honest to God, in the last month, 3 of them have died. 3 of my clients in the blind community have died. Ken Metz and Marlene Lieberg and Sue Emitter, who were all very active in structured negotiation. And I think part of eldering is, bringing that history up and honoring people and recognizing the connections and, introducing people who don't know each other.
So many different ways we can go from here. I think there's some of, and I'm gonna let you choose your own adventure. So part of it is, what I'm hearing and what I've enjoyed about our discussions is just what is the hope for the folks who are in the room who are just starting this journey, right? And what do you want to imbue them with? And I think part of it is, what are the fears that you have? You started talking about, what I really hear you saying is that accessibility right now has a lot of heart. And that heart comes from this small group of people who got together to change the world, right? And so how do we imbue the community with that heart so that that remains regardless of the core people who kind of got that started? And I think that's one of the lineages, is I think that heart gets imbued with each of us. So you want to talk about hopes or fears next?
Well, I think the hopes are pretty clear, right? I mean, we would, like Lainey said, it would be great if we didn't have to rely on the law. If people, one of the strongest hopes that I have is that eventually we won't have this job because it's going to be so integrated into, I think this is a rather, pie in the sky hope, but if we could get the accessibility mindset integrated into how you learn to make technology from the start, then there would be less of a need for all of this conflict around it, and less need for legal action. And so I think some of that for me is the biggest hope, that it is so clearly integrated that it becomes a non-issue.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the greatest hope.
Yeah. We all put ourselves out of a job.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then what do we do?
Huh? Oh, then we
Then we
go
go to Austin. That's an amusement.
Then we get to
Okay, well, I'll do fear, because I know we want to leave time for
Yep.
the audience. But really, in the legal space, my fear is just that lawyers are going to wreck it. And it's really, honestly, I feel like the ground is shifting underneath me. There's been more attention on accessibility because of these legal strategies that many of us don't agree with. I'm frustrated by that because, if it takes that kind of hammer to get the attention, then maybe the hammer is a positive thing. On the other hand, I know what it's like to be inside an organization where people are really trying and to get that hammer based on not much evidence. So that's really my fear, that accessibility will shrink in the way the laws are shrunken thing. And so, the civil rights aspect is so key. It's my hope that people will just understand that, as Sharron said. And my fear is that accessibility becomes a business, and it's not just the law, it's, all aspects of it, that it just becomes a business and loses the heart. That's my fear.
Yes. That is something to fear, for sure. Jan told a great story in the K-12 session yesterday about, when she and I went to the Office of Civil Rights of the Department of Ed, and I don't know, sometime in the early teens, maybe 2010 or 12. Anyway, we were trying to get them to just look at K-12 schools and start some performance reviews. And they said, oh, no, you can't do that. You have to have some parents complain, you have to file some complaints. Well, a couple years ago, this advocate in Michigan started filing complaints like mad. She sent out on her Twitter feed, I know how to fill out these complaints. If you have a problem, I'll fill them out for you. And like 1,500 or 2,000, she started filing the complaints. And the OCR had to act on that, but now they've passed a rule that says, if it's a mass production, we can just dismiss it. And so it's really a balance between, if she had not done that, there would still be no action. But then once you start the action, there's this.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. So talking about businesses getting into accessibility, I work for Microsoft, and I remember when I joined Microsoft in 2010. I literally told all of my friends, and I remember coming to CSUN and Sharron, and Jim Thatcher kind of grilling me about, what are you doing in the evil empire? And I was like, hey, if I still have a soul after a year, I'm going to give it another 5. And I've been there, well, I can't do the math, I guess I've been there about 8 years. So, and I still believe I have a soul, as far as I can tell.
I've seen it.
Yeah. I have to say that, given that I've been in accessibility also since 1995, and it's been interesting observing companies like Microsoft and Google take up the mantle of accessibility. And I think the way, at least at Microsoft, that Satya is doing it. So I don't know, are people familiar with Satya Nadella? He's the CEO of Microsoft, but more importantly, he's the parent of a child with a disability. And he's spoken very publicly about that. And it's fascinating. I got to present to him on Friday, which is really exciting.
Yes.
And of course my demo, I didn't have Wi-Fi and it didn't quite go according to plan. But it's awesome to talk with someone and be in the room where our senior leadership team is talking about accessibility and how to really make the world more accessible. And it's interesting that when other companies come up, they're like, that's awesome. That makes the world more accessible. And that blows me away.
Yes.
Because to me, that's the heart and that's the hope that as businesses embrace it and really figure out ways to make their products accessible, they're also making things innovative. And I think that's the cool part about it, is that some of the technologies that are coming out now due to AI and some of the other technologies out there, so it is the most exciting time to be in accessibility because we're getting to do really cool stuff. And we're not just fighting anymore. I feel like so much of my career has been pushing that rock up the hill, and I feel like the rock's starting to go down the other side. So for me, I've got a lot of hope right now. So anyway, welcome to the party.
Hi, I definitely share your fears around legal kind of taking over and losing the heart of accessibility.
What's your name? Where are you from?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm Jonathan. I'm from Austin. And I will say though that as someone that has been trying to champion accessibility at each of his jobs ever since I got to actually sit down and learn about it. I've been reading a lot of articles, everything I can get my hands on how to get people motivated, how to get people excited about and interested in learning accessibility, and getting buy-in from the business. But I will say that lawsuit here and there, but for when reason, love, and empathy don't work, at the very least, for the people within a particularly large organizations where you have those people that do care, it does give that little bit of leverage, that makes it easier to spread that seed throughout the organization. It gives you that, foundation to, set the ground. It's like, look, everyone said that we're going to do this, and from there, you get people's ears open, and then you can kind of get people passionate from starting from there.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, I think also one of the things that I think people have to get very good at in this community is making those connections. And again, I think both of you have done an amazing job of that, of connecting, at least in my experience, when people meet someone with a disability, it really can, literally change their world. And I think that was, and again, William Lefroy, right? He was another one of the big, he's a big one there. But he always said that if not all of us are connected, none of us are connected. Or he has a really good quote, right? And I think that's very important. Yeah, talking about love and heart, right? Will be love. That's our man.
Yeah, love.com.
So I wanted to suggest a challenge to anyone that has any accessibility experience. My name is Glenda the Good Witch. Sharron's my accessibility mom, okay? Is that any of us that are already established in any way in accessibility, that we need to pay it forward to the next person. And I remember when I was in that spot where I felt like I was alone and rolling the giant boulder uphill, and who came up and helped me? John Slatin and Sharron Rush. And so it's a privilege for me to find people that feel like they're alone. Meet my new friend Louise.
Hi, Louise.
And to help them realize that no, they're not alone. And we've got experience. We've got 20 years or more of experience for some of us older ones. And it's like, share that with them and give them a safe place to come, because they may be alone where they are, like in that work. And they may be rolling that boulder uphill just like we did back in the day. So it's still happening, but they don't have to be alone and give up hope.
Yeah, it
Because
sounds like
together
it's happening for Jonathan.
we can shoulder, and it's so much fun. So my challenge for you, if you know one thing, it's your time to pay it forward and find the next person.
Good one.
You know what, I think we forgot to mention the hashtag.
Oh, yeah.
We still want to do that?
We thought we should have a hashtag.
Yeah, so part of it is we want to keep the discussion going because I think there's also a lot of history that we want to document. And we were talking about creating some Wikipedia stubs. And I mean, there's just so many stories in our community to tell. And part of it is if you know your history, hopefully you won't make the same mistakes again. And I know I've made a few. So hopefully what we can do is keep the conversation going. So not just in this room, but on Twitter and Wikipedia and whatever other ideas you have. Like, do we need some sort of accessibility oral history or something like that?
So what was our hashtag?
I think it was A11Y Elder.
A11Y Elder, okay.
Keep it simple.
Does everyone in here know A11Y is the social media hashtag for accessibility? Because that's many letters. There's 11 letters.
A11Y.
A11Y. Yeah. Right, good.
Hey, John.
Oh no.
Okay, so wait, 1 second, John. So are we good with that? A11Y Elder?
Elder.
Singular.
A11Y Elder.
said by the elders, got his.
And thus spoke. This is your hashtag. Go and propagate it widely.
Go forth and.
The whole idea of the accessibility tribe, for me, came listening to Wendy's ode to Twitter at CSUN a few years ago. And John, I'm sorry, I know you've got a comment, so.
Should we take the
Oh,
vote
was that my
first?
cue?
That was your.
Go ahead, yeah.
Okay. So a little inside baseball is the reason it's 1-1 is because there are 11 letters in the word accessibility.
11 characters between the A and the Y.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Ooh. I
And
like
there's
that.
actually a word for that thing. It's like a Newman.
Yeah, because they do that with internationalization too. It's AI18N, right?
We are all geeks, huh?
Yeah, my name is really W3Y.
So I'm John Rochford. I'm with the University of Massachusetts Medical School and also with the World Wide Web Consortium. And my question, actually I have a question, not a comment. And my question is, do you think it's important for elders to think of themselves as people with disabilities? Because I'm going to say they, because I'm not going to say we, because I'm not that old.
You don't have to be
A lot of age thing.
Not that being old is a bad thing. Anyway, it's common for people who are elders not to think of themselves as being deaf or having low vision or hard of hearing, or for them to think that that they don't think so clearly anymore, their memory's failing, they're acquiring disabilities as they age, but because they want their independence, they really don't want to talk about, in my opinion anyway, in my experience, they don't really want to be talking about having disabilities because that would mean perhaps that they can no longer drive and they can lose their independence. And so I find it's difficult when talking with elders about accommodation and about web accessibility, et cetera. So what do you think?
Yes, that is a good point, I think.
And there's a couple of ways I think, and I think that helps emphasize one of the points we really wanted to make sure that we drove home, even though, we're not really talking about that kind of thing. But what we're hoping is that we will have more people with disabilities seen as elders in the community. It's very important. That's one thing that we're kind of talking about is kind of like what's next, right? Like our roles are shifting quite a lot. I used to know all the ins and outs of ARIA and HTML, but as I've gone on in my career, I now have to rely on other people. So these shifting roles I think are important and stepping back. And so do you want to talk about more about stepping back and how important it is? I think it's a slightly different take on what you're saying.
Yeah, well, I just want to say real quick that part of, like I said at the outset, eldering being a verb, part of that verb is not just knowing when to be creative and pass things on, but when to step back and make space. And especially here, like for me, when I started out, I graduated law school in 1981. As far as I know, there were no people with disabilities out in my law school class. When I started in this work in the early 90s, I didn't really know any blind lawyers but one. And now there are a lot of blind lawyers working in the space, and so it's really important, to John's point, I don't think we should call ourselves disabled unless we have a disability, but I think it's very important for those of us, for me as a lawyer who's not disabled yet in the space, part of the eldering is understanding that I need to step back and leave more room for disabled lawyers, in particular in my work, blind lawyers, to have more space and more voice.
Yeah, and I think it's very important for us to be very out about our disabilities. I rewatched Harvey Milk is one of my inspirations, so I rewatched Milk last night, and he started every speech with, "I'm here to recruit you," and how important it is for us to be outside. I have PTSD, and so that's a very real challenge that I have to work around, and so we need to be out about that too. So as we're aging and as we're acquiring disabilities. Yeah.
And part of your recruitment was that note to Twitter. Are you going to read any of it?
Sure. Yes. Okay. So I rewrote it a little bit because I went back. So I wrote this poem. I think who started it? Was it Webbing or Pascal Group? You guys started this tweet up at Seaside.
The tweet up. It was Webbing.
Yeah. Right.
It was Jared who started it.
So this was in 2010 that I wrote this. It's called An Ode to Twitter. And after our conversations, I edited it on the way down yesterday. And it was interesting because other folks got up and did like 5-minute lightning talks, and I got up and read a poem. So instead of an ode to Twitter, I'm going to call it an ode to accessibility communities. And I'm going to use the plural because this is an amalgam of a bunch of different communities. I think we've got there are some blindness specific and some hearing and deafness and cognitive mental health but all together we also come together as a single community. But I'm going to use the plural. My name is Wendy Chisholm and I want to recruit you. Listen, hear, see, feel, perceive, connection. Thousands of people or more working on accessibility. Hashtag A11Y. Access, inclusion, connection. We are able to change the world, able to connect with others who are able to connect with others, who are able to connect with us, who are able to be here this morning, who are able to hear, see, feel, perceive a world where we are all able to change the world, to innovate, to connect. And I deleted a bunch of it. And let's see where it goes from here. Our community invented the innovations that make iPhones and Androids possible. On-screen keyboards, word prediction, screen magnification, speech recognition. What we do today makes tomorrow's innovations possible. Makes it possible for more people in more situations to do more things. We rock, right? Yes.
Yes.
We are moving towards inclusion one person at a time. We still have so much to do. There's still so many restaurants who are not accessible to people who use wheelchairs. We still have so many images that don't have alt text. We still have so much culture change and so many tools that are needed to include accessibilities so that we can produce products, websites, and applications that are accessible at the alpha release. This is my ode to the accessibility community, my ode to the tribe, my ode to our connections and our innovations, our persistence, and our determination. Thank you.
So we're ready to go forth and have a great AccessU, talk to each other.
I would just like to not put anyone on the spot, but does anyone want to self-identify as an elder so those newcomers can?
Well, Glenda did.
Glenda did. Anybody else? Just Wendy's?
All right.
Okay, everybody see those?
Yeah, come
of us over the next 2 days.
Brenda Adrian.
Give us a hug.
Sitting around, and she is.
I said self-identify. Self-identify. Okay, thank you all for this. Thank you, Wendy, for bringing us together. And I want to thank Sharron. I had this tiny little idea of trying to figure out my life, and she turned it into this. So.
Yay!